I'm fat, I'm naked, this must be a naked blog. And today we're talking about body image because there was some douchebag troll who sat there on the internet and said that Trisha Hirschberger had thick thighs. Let me tell you something, douchebag troll internet freak. God made Trisha Hirschberger a really small little girl because he knew we could only stand so much of that woman. She's that kind of awesome that if there were any more Trisha Hirschberger in this world, we just couldn't handle it. Anyway, Trisha would like me to talk about how I did something nice for someone, and yeah, I'm not a nice person. So first I'm going to talk about body image. Throughout human history, images of the ideal women have changed. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. All of them share one critical point. A hips to waist ratio of 0.7. That's it. Fat girl, skinny girl, doesn't matter. The hips are bigger than the waist. The waist is 0.7, the hips. The waist is 70% of the hips. That's it. Now, Playboy models, people have looked at this, tend to be somewhere around 0.69 or 0.65. They tend to be a little under 0.7. Okay. They also tend to be photoshopped. So just remember that. And they tend to be made of plastic. Throughout history, it's kind of always hovered around this point. Now, in modern times, we say we like skinny girls. There's a Western idea that the skinny girls are the more attractive women in the world. Interestingly enough, during a great famine in France, where you saw that Leonardo DiCaprio movie, The Man in the Iron Mask, remember there was that one scene where there's that really big girl and she fell over? Yeah, during that time, big girls were considered attractive because everyone was starving. There used to be a fast food restaurant I would visit right before going home. It's part of the reason I'm such a large person today. And I remember there was this one woman that worked there, often worked there the hour I was going there, and she would always deliver her lines perfectly. Exactly what the company wanted her to say, very professional. And one day I turned to her and I said, you know, I really appreciate how professional you are. I like that. It makes me feel like I'm going to get my order gotten properly. And her face lit up and she said thank you, although I don't think she ever remembered that. Same thing. There was a gentleman I worked with, an older man. He had come to California, Lord knows why, but he worked in social services where I work now, working with the homeless. And, you know, one night I just turned to him and I said, by the way, I just want to say I appreciate working with you. It meant a lot to him. Of course, he then went out and got a better job, so I guess that's a good thing, right? I mean, I inspired him to have confidence in himself and move on, have a better life. I'm proud of that. Now, I'll tell you an incident in my life where I was extremely nice to somebody. I was walking out of a classroom once. It was my last semester in college. And I saw two people standing over a third person. When I got closer, I noticed that this third person had dislocated his ankle. He was sitting on the ground, possibly in shock. And despite the fact that it was none of my business, I immediately stopped. I stopped and I said, "What happened?" They said, they said he fell off his scooter. Might have been his skateboard, but fell off some sort of a device, caught his foot on the planter, completely dislocated his ankle, was pointed the wrong way. So I go into security guard mode because I've been a security guard all my life. And I say, has anybody called 911? And knowing that I couldn't give the location well, finding out that no one had called 911, I flagged down someone from campus security who was in the parking lot just beyond, said, hey, we have an injury here, we need an ambulance. He called the campus police officer, who eventually called 911. At this point, the other two people said, we have to go to class. And they left. I remember this gentleman on the ground, his name was Shunt. Like Sean, but not. Shunt. And I realized at that point he had been down there for a while. Soon, he may start screaming and flailing. If he goes into a bad state of shock, his heart could start racing and he could go into cardiac arrest. This man literally could have died from dislocating his ankle. So, being me, I got down on the ground beside him. I said, Shunt, grab my wrist. I want you to grab my wrist, and I want you to knead and then hold. The reason I was doing that was to keep blood circulating to his hands and give him something to focus on while the ambulance arrived. As time went on, we may have been there doing that for 7 or 8 minutes. I really couldn't tell you. I asked him questions to keep him thinking, where he lived, what his major was, how his relationship with his parents were, all those kinds of things, because I knew I had to keep him out of shock. Now, at some point I said, hey man, don't worry. I'm not going anywhere till I know you're safe. Then the ambulance arrived and the firemen, and they picked up his bag and they picked up him, and I kept him focused the whole time until they got him into a gurney. And one of the firemen turns to me and says, do you know this guy? I said no, because I'd never seen him before in my life. And as they're carting him away, he calls out, thank you. Now, again, you might call this nice. I call this appropriate. I think this is the least I could have done for my fellow human being. Was on my way home. There was nothing in my life at that moment that could possibly have been more important than keeping that man safe. That's kind of how I view this idea of nice. Nice. Something completely out of the blue. Appropriate. What you should do. If you work with people and you appreciate their hard work, you should tell them so. Because that's only decent human behavior. If someone needs help, you should help them. Because that's only decent human behavior. And if you're some guy on the internet who can't say something nice, well, maybe you're trying to be funny. I know I've been that stupid too, but if it upsets people, you might want to apologize. No. Well, anyway, that's enough of me being stupid. You folks have a good day.